This is Caleb Westfall, and I am interviewing Annie Hahn as part of the Bayview Historical Society's 40th Anniversary Oral History Project. It is currently about 10:20 in the morning on May 20th, 2019, and we are at the Beulah Brinton House in Bayview, also joined by Gail Germanson and John Sargent. Annie has agreed to participate and contribute to today's recording to the Bayview Historical Society's archival collection so that it may be preserved and available for future use as indicated on the deed of gift form reviewed and signed by Annie. Annie, please be assured that we understand that your participation is fully voluntary and that we can take a break, postpone, or terminate the interview at any time at your request. We have a list of questions to help get the discussion started, but you are welcome to decline answering any of these that you don't want to answer and to answer others as you see fit. We have some specific topics that we want to cover, but mostly want to hear what you have to say about your experiences in Bayview. We have set aside about an hour for this interview with the understanding that it may run slightly shorter or longer. We thank you for your time and willingness to share your stories with us today. And with that, we will get started.
Okay.
Can you please state your name, where and when you were born, and where you currently live?
My name is Annie Hahn. I was born in 1936 as Anne Margaret Singleton, and I lived in the triplex on the corner of Estes and Wentworth that was owned by my grandmother and my two aunts who lived upstairs. We lived in the back unit, and the front unit was rented out. I lived there until I was 7 years old, but I have some very nice memories of living there.
And where do you currently?
I currently live, which is called the John Steiner House on the corner of Knock and Superior. Do you want the address?
That's, if you want to.
2748 South Superior, but the house faces Knock. It was originally a puddler's cottage and has been renovated, and the front door has moved to the side door, so it faces Knock.
Oh. So the next question kind of leads in from that, but it says, where do you live in Bayview and for how long? Or where did you live in Bayview and for how long? So do you kind of want to talk about, like you said until you were 7 where you lived? You want to
I lived there with my grandmother. I want to mention that my grandfather, Frank Singleton, worked for the rolling steel mill. And he died in 1913. He was 41 due to an industrial accident. So I never knew him. His parents were from Ireland. My grandmother, Margaret Singleton, was born Margaret Shanahan, my great-grandmother. So I'm the 4th generation in Bayview. My great-grandmother, Catherine Shanahan, had 4 children with her first husband, and he died rather young. She married again to James Naughton. Both husbands from Ireland. Naughton had to change his name to Norton, and they had 4, so in all she had 8 children, and one of them was my grandmother, Margaret. So that's where we lived until I was 7. I do have some memories there. Did you want to hear it?
Yeah, if you want to talk
Okay.
about it.
When I was 3 or 4, my dad would say, "Do you want to go see the horses?" And I'd say, "Yes." And we'd walk up to Kneisler's, which is now the White House, and that was his excuse to get a shot and a beer. And he'd plunk me down on the floor, and this is what I remember, is playing in sawdust. The whole floor was sawdust, and then the brass railing, the foot railing. And then he'd have his beer, and then we'd cross the street, and there was a horse barn, which is now kind of the subway and maybe part of the church.
Okay.
And the horses were draft horses pulling for the garbage wagons. And I remember them, and I remember the ice wagon coming and dropping off ice. I remember the rag man coming and with the horse-drawn carriage. And then I also, as I lived there, remember the man that sharpened scissors with a cart. And then there was the man that brought a pony around and would, do you want your child sitting on the horse, the little pony? So like everybody my age had um, pictures of sitting on the pony. So that was one memory. The other memory was when I was 5, we had that picture of the Christmas party in the Welsh church, which nobody I know ever sees. And then World War II started, and this kind of was a scary time for a kid because we had to have blackout curtains and shades, and at night you had to have those drawn, and very little light. We had the radio going, and all you heard was bombing. I didn't know where, but it was frightening thinking that we could get bombed. And my grandmother Singleton would rock me in the rocking chair and sing Irish lullabies. But my grandfather, my mother's side, my grandfather Double, who lived on 2807 South Superior Street, in the middle of the block between Rusk and Trowbridge, he was a block warden. So he wore a pith helmet, a white pith helmet, and a flashlight. Every night when they had these blackouts, he'd go around that whole block of Superior, Rusk, Wentworth, and Trowbridge to make sure everybody had their lights out and the house was black. And I remember food stamps, going to the store with food stamps, not getting maybe meat once, maybe twice a week, and every 2 weeks we were allowed meat. I remember my mother starting to get into canning food, and as I grew older, I had to help her, which was very tedious. But those were some of the memories I had living with my grandmother and my 2 aunts. So that was that area. Then when I was 7, we bought a house 4 blocks south on Wentworth, 2981 South Wentworth. It had a double lot, so we had this wonderful yard to play in. We had badminton, we had a basketball. My dad put up a homemade net, croquet, we cooked out. It just was a wonderful place for kids to grow up.
And how long were you at that house then?
I was there until I got married.
Okay.
When I was living on Estes at my grandmother's, I went to Trowbridge School through 2nd grade. And what I remember with that is on the corner of Trowbridge and Delaware was Brandt Store, Brandt. And they sold penny candy, and they had it in the window. You get your pennies, 5 pennies, you go, and that was such a treat. They put it in a little paper bag. I don't remember food there, but I'm sure they had food. But I do remember they also repaired radios.
Is your house still there on Wentworth?
Yes.
Because I live on Superior in Bennett, and your house would be right around the corner. And there is a big house there with a double lot. I wonder if that's it.
There's 2 houses. The house, we were, from Bennett, we were the 3rd house, 1, 2, 3, 4th house from the corner.
I think the Newcombs live there now, I bet.
Well, I don't know. The lady that lives there hasn't kept it up. And I met her a couple times. She won't let me in.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
That's
She had a rummage sale, and I stopped by. She's friendly, but but it's a double lot with trees. It's really a nice area. Okay, so then when I lived there, do you want me to go on?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. 3rd and 4th grade, I went to St. Mary's Academy.
Me too.
In grade school?
No.
Okay, because they stopped, 4th grade, they stopped the grade school, no longer. And then I went to Immaculate Conception. But when St. Mary's, my best friend, Patty, was with me. We were always together since birth, and she's still my best friend. The seminary, St. Francis Seminary, was our playground. And in the seminary was the little chapel in the woods. And that was our favorite place to go. And they had a pump organ. Well, we thought we could play this. Neither one of us knew how, but we'd sit there and pound on the organ. And then we talked about getting married there. Now, you can only get like 10 people in this place. And so, but our imagination just went wild because this was like exploring adventures. We went through the woods. We found the cemetery where all the priests are buried, and it was just hidden. You know, it was just like a world of its own.
Did you ever see the ghost nun?
No.
I've heard that story, that she wanders in that cemetery.
Oh, okay. No, we didn't. So that was third and fourth grade, and then fifth grade through eighth grade, Immaculate Conception.
Okay. I was just wondering, you were talking about, World War II before you were 7 when you were still at your first home. Do you remember after you moved? Do you remember the end of the war at all? Or
Yes, I do remember. The one thing was the end of the war. My Aunt Catherine, who lived upstairs, said, "You have to come with me." And we got on the streetcar and went down to Water and Wisconsin Avenue and celebrate. I mean, you could not move. It was so crowded with sailors. The streets just overflowed with people celebrating. And I was scared because I was afraid I'd lose her. Mm-hmm. So I kept hanging on to her tight. And that's what I remember at the end.
And you were about 9 then? Or
yeah.
8 or 9? Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about your school days? You said 5th through 8th grade then you want to talk about that time?
That was a fun time. The neat thing about growing up in Bayview, and at that time all over, we were let outside. The parents said just be home for dinner. And we played. I mean, we were on the go. We had bikes. We were biking all over. We played down along South Shore, the beach, walked, hiked, way into St. Francis, again exploring. But we just were outside. We played, pickup baseball, roller skating, ice skating. There was an ice rink across from in South Shore Park on the corner of Rusk. And they had a little shanty, and in the shanty was a wood-burning stove, and you'd go in and warm up your hands with your wet wool mittens. And in the summer, the shanty was taken down, and it was tennis courts. Just one. But I learned how to play tennis there. My dad taught me how to swim in the lake. We would swim out to, at that time, South Shore Beach had a raft, 2-story, with a diving board. And I was so proud when I could swim out there. In high school, we graduated to Oklahoma Beach, away from the little kids.
Where did you go to high school?
Bayview High School.
Everybody went to Bayview High School,
Yeah.
except me.
Well, I want to back up a bit.
Sure.
Can I do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thinking of that, my parents went to Bayview High School. My dad dropped out or got kicked out, but my mother finished. And but my dad was a prankster, a jokester. He and his buddies always into stuff. And when they lived on Superior Street across from South Shore Park, there were homes. And they were in the process, when she was in high school, taking the houses down. And they left all the plumbing fixtures out on the street there. And one morning, my grandmother, my Nana, double, got up and looked out. The porch was an enclosed porch, it still is. And here it was loaded with toilet seats. My dad and his buddies took all of those toilet seats, jammed them on the porch. My grandmother, my Nana, I still remember her telling the story. She was so furious. She told my mother, "You get that Pat Singleton to get that out of here right now." So they did. They came and they got the toilet seats out. But it was interesting because people don't remember that there were homes across the street. And they made it into a nice park.
Across the street from where the park is?
Yeah.
There were homes there?
Homes there on Superior Street, between Rusk and Trowbridge. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I
was just wondering what year your mom graduated from Bayview High School. If you had any idea. Does that mean that?
I know, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
But it was like 1913. No. Yeah. Oh, before that, because 1913, my grandfather died. And so it was probably 1910, 11, yeah.
Was it still in the same location? 'Cause
They're
it-
probably in the barracks then.
They were in the barracks, and when she graduated, the school was finished.
oh,
So
okay.
she never got into the
Yeah,
school.
so
They were
it's
in the barracks.
1924 is when the current school, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk more about your time at Bayview High School?
Bayview High School was fun. Made a lot of friends. The one thing I remember, we had open campus. We could go out for lunch, go home. A lot of kids live right nearby. But I remember in the spring and the fall, my friends and I would put our money together and rent a rowboat at Humboldt Park Lagoon.
During school time, during lunch?
During lunchtime.
Okay.
Yeah, and the boys did too. So we'd get into these splashing fights. And when we went back to school, yeah, we were wet.
Do you remember how much of a lunch break you had? How much time did you have to
Good
do?
an hour.
Yeah.
Wow, honey.
I know, it was a
Huh.
full hour.
Yeah.
Did they sell? Was there food you could buy over there too for lunch? or-
No.
No.
It was
Just-
bag lunch. We all brought our
Yeah.
bag lunch. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then our hangout was McKinnon's drugstore on the corner of Delaware and Rusk, which now is a sports gym or something, a workout.
Oh, where Hince's used to be?
Where Hince's bought that, yes. But it was McKinnon's. They had a soda fountain, and it was perfect for high school kids.
Yeah.
It was our hangout.
You hung out there after school or during your lunch break? Or?
No, after school, particularly after football games,
Yeah.
everybody did. Yeah, and then across the street from that was the Bayview Theater that showed movies. And in high school, we'd go to the Avalon. My friend Patty and I in grade school figured out how to get in through the back door.
Famous
I
back
keep
door.
hearing about this back.
Yes.
So, and then we went. The Mirth was another movie theater.
And where was that located?
On Kinnickinnick down between Potter and Russell.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I don't know what it is now.
I-
But
It's still, the building is
It's still
but
there,
I
right.
forget what it is.
it used to be a dime store, I think, or something.
Shampoo's Dime Store
Yeah.
and the Mirth.
Mirth, yeah.
I forget what it is now, though.
I can't picture it. Mm-mm.
It's on the
We have a picture of it, and it
east.
used to be here, but it's not now.
It's on the east side of Connecticut.
It's on the west side. I can't visualize it. It's on the west
I
side.
can't either. Yeah, it's on the west.
Do you remember some of the movies you saw when you went to the theater?
Oh,
Anything stick
I-
out?
well, I remember my introduction to Shakespeare. My aunt took me to the Bayview Theater to see Hamlet with Laurence Olivier.
Wow.
I was very impressed with that. Quo Vadis was another one. All the Doris Day movies we saw,
Mhm.
the musicals, and at that time, Bayview High School was known for putting on their own musicals.
Mhm.
It was awesome what they did. Yeah.
Were you ever involved with the musicals at the
No,
high
I
school?
can't sing. I
No.
thought I could sing, but I can't. No, and I was kind of shy. I just, yeah,
Mm.
didn't. My friends were in it, but I always went, supported them.
Sure. Were there any other things you were involved in at the high school or any?
Oh my gosh.
Clubs or
Okay,
things like that?
My Aunt Catherine was very religious and wanted me to go to St. Mary's Academy for high school. But I was a swimmer. I was really getting into swimming, and Bayview High School had a swimming pool. They had synchronized swimming, and that's what I wanted to do. And so it became a big family issue, and I really stood up for what I wanted. And I went to Bayview High School, and I was in both the Nereids, which was the beginning synchronized, and then the Finn after that, the next level. And eventually I did professional synchronized with the Milwaukee Finn Club and competed for a couple, like 2 years, and then I didn't have time because I went to college. But that was my goal. I was in a lot of stuff. I was in the athletics, playing tennis, and field hockey. We played field hockey, and we competed with Downer Seminary at that time, which is no longer there, is UWM now.
Okay.
Yeah. I was in Round Table Club, a lot of clubs. I was very active. I could bring my oracle and show you.
Oh,
So,
sure.
but,
Anything else you want to say about the high school at all, or?
well, I talked about ice skating and swimming. When we were in high school, or even 7th and 8th grade, we kind of graduated to the Humboldt Park Lagoon. And they had music and you could skate. That was really nice. And then with swimming, we graduated to Oklahoma Beach, and it was more like sunbathing. But there's, at that time, no breakwater there, and it was really a nice, better swimming area. So we did that in high school. And then at 16, I had to work. I had to pay for my own college, and
So where did you work?
my great aunts. This is something else I wanted to talk about. Was that in Bayview you had families that really stuck together, lived around each other, went to school. You had cousins there. Part of it was the immigration type of the Italians were together. Within a 4-block radius, I had my grandmother, Singleton, and aunts, my grandmother and grandfather Double on Superior Street. My next door to them were my aunt and uncle, my brothers, my dad's brother, George Singleton, and then on the corner of Rusk, 2 doors in, my great aunts lived. My Aunt Kit and Nell, and they owned Dreyermeyer corset shops, so I became a professional corseteer there. Not really, but that's what I tell people because I worked there.
So that's where you started when you were 16?
That, and I worked at Gimbel's. Southgate Mall was the first mall,
Okay.
and Gimbel's was there. Worked there. But before that, I babysat. I was babysitting at 11 and 12 years old. A lot, so.
And so you, how old were you when you went to college then? Were you
18. After I graduated, I went to Marquette.
Okay.
And, yeah. And I remember, going way back, there was a streetcar. We always had fun riding the streetcar and get to the end of the line at Oklahoma. And then we turned the seat. We thought we were helping the conductor turn the seats back. They were wicker seats.
What was the tuition at Marquette when you were there?
It was interesting, like $325 a quarter, or semester. I take that back, a semester.
Because I went to Marquette and it was like a little over 500 when I went there.
Okay. But then each year it increased a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I worked in the registrar's office for Dr. Vanderbeek. Through
Towards your tuition?
Yeah. And I got to my last semester and I didn't have enough money, and I asked my aunts for a loan, and they gave me a loan, and then for graduation they wiped the loan out.
So, what did you study when you were?
Speech therapy.
Oh.
I started out with physical therapy, but I wasn't good at science, and so I switched to speech.
And so you still lived in the same house you said at that time too?
Yes, on Wentworth.
And then you were talking about you would take the streetcar to school?
Well, by now it was the bus.
The bus,
Yes.
okay.
Take the bus. High school, we walked no matter what the weather was. We're walking to Bayview High School.
Let's see. Do you want to talk more about your family life when you got older then? Like you were talking about when you got married, or?
I want to talk about the change in what happened in Bayview when I got married.
Okay.
I graduated in 1958 and got married in 1958. So I left Bayview. All of my friends that I hung out with got married and moved away out of state. This is when the changes started. A lot of people from Bayview High School stayed in the area or moved in the city, and eventually moved out to suburbs like Oak Creek, Franklin, Cudahy, South Milwaukee. People were moving out. But what was happening in the 60s was that companies also were transferring employees. So you never knew if you were transferred to another state. The economy was bad because we were in the Vietnam War. It was at the time of racial unrest going on. The manufacturers were starting to cut back or close down, so it affected a lot of the blue collar workers in Bayview. And people started, and I remember this, my mother telling me this, because I lived in the city, no longer in Bayview. But people started converting their homes to two-family, taking in boarders. My mother took a boarder. My Nana double took boarders. It just was the 60s were a hard time in Bayview.
And so what part of town did you live in at that time?
Southwest. Southwest Milwaukee.
And then...
And then eventually moved to Whitefish Bay.
Okay.
And my children went to Whitefish Bay schools. And then I came back, I got divorced, and eventually in 1986 I came back to Bayview. And I bought a home on Wentworth. It's like I was glued to Wentworth. But the home I bought was owned by Jerome Meyer family. That was kind of historic too, because he was known, he owned an organ company. He built organ pipes and repaired organ pipes. And I bought it from his grandson. And this, I think, is fascinating about Bayview, is people refer to the home, if you lived there for a long time, raised a family, that was your home. Where I grew up with is now the Singleton home. I bought the John Steiner home. And when I came back, I bought the Meyer home. And people just still refer to him like that. So.
I'll just look at some of the questions here. It says, do you have any memories about the rolling mill? But of course, that was torn down, I think, when you were like 3 or something. They tore it down.
It closed in 29.
Yeah, I was going to say 30, 19.
I think like a decade later they tore it down.
So I have no recollection of one, because we wandered when we were kids in grade school. We were all over, and I don't remember seeing anything like that.
Did you hear any stories about your grandfather's time there? Do you want to talk about that?
He worked when he was very young. He came from Zanesville, Ohio. His parents, Patrick Singleton and Joanna Reardon, were from Ireland. And he worked at the rolling steel mill on the river that goes through there. It's called the I can't pronounce the river. But then he came to, who knows what happened with jobs, but he was young. Mm-hmm. And he came to Milwaukee and met my grandmother and got a job at the rolling steel mill. So he had experience at one steel mill.
Yeah. Do you know what year he came here?
No, I don't.
Was he the one that was injured there?
He was killed.
He was killed? How was he killed?
From what I've heard is he was hit with a steel beam or something, loading up. He was on the dock and knocked unconscious and fell into the water and drowned. Yeah.
Wow.
Do you want to talk any more about activities around the lake at all? I know you talked about swimming down there.
Well, the other thing we were down there in the winter. My friend Patty and I would climb the ice along, how the waves just beat against the shore and form these big ice chunks or boulders, and we would climb on them and slip sometimes into the water, and then we'd go to, which was called the bathhouse, and we didn't want our parents to know we got our snowsuits and all these wool clothes wet. So we take them off and try to dry them on the radiators. But we'd be in one area, which was probably the women's shower area. Because at that time we had the men's shower on one side. The men's shower is now the beer garden. And the women's on the other side. But there'd be always these old men playing cards. And we were half undressed, and then we thought, this might not be such a good idea. We better get some of these wet clothes on.
Did they have a toboggan slide? I remember a toboggan slide
In Humboldt Park.
Well, maybe that was
They didn't have it in, well, I don't know, I don't remember that. One of the things I do remember, and this was 8th grade, we had a toboggan, and a bunch of us kids went to the seminary, and there was this hill, and we called it Devil's Hill, and at the bottom was this big mound, and we'd go down the toboggan on that, and it was dangerous. Yeah.
So what did you like most about living in Bayview?
I liked it, knowing people. We knew our neighbors. We knew people at church. My relatives around, even though sometimes that gets a little sticky. But it just was nice to have this community. And I like to have knowing that we had the freedom of the run of Bayview, wherever we wanted to go. Our parents didn't know. Mm-hmm. It's funny, they weren't concerned, but some of it could have been dangerous.
So is that what kind of convinced you to move back here then, or?
It was the lake.
I
love the lake.
Yeah.
Oh, I just love the lake. And I think it's just a neat area. So I wanted to come back.
Do you want to talk all about, you just said, community of your church. Do you want to talk about what church you had?
We went to Immaculate Conception Church, yeah. And I graduated, our graduation picture was on the steps of the church, which is no longer there.
Mine too. There's a picture on the steps.
Yeah, they remodeled it and turned it around. Yeah. So the entrance is opposite of what it used to be. But it was a wooden schoolhouse. I mean, when I was there, the school was all wood. And at that time, so that was 5th grade, 6th grade, probably then, I remember this parochial school, I think it was called St. Anne's in Chicago, that burned with all these children in it. It was just frightening. It was built just the way Immaculate Conception Church was built. Just a wooden structure. And I thought, oh, this is not a safe place to be. But, yeah, when I went to Immaculate Conception, it's right up the block from the Italian section, where the Italians live. So we had a lot of Italians. A lot of them were my friends. Yeah, it was just nice.
Do you remember that the pastor at Immaculate Conception didn't want the Italians?
I wasn't going to say that, but okay, my mother converted to Catholicism before she was married, and Father Fagan was the pastor at that time.
Father Fagan.
Yeah. And he would not allow Italians, they were just, immigrated to work in the mill, into that church. So they built the little pink church in the 3rd Ward, which eventually burned down. But when Father Fagan died or was removed, Father Pierce came in, and he was a pastor, and he said, enough of that. This church is open to everybody. So then the Italians came. Yeah.
Just by saying that, you're kind of answering the next question, which is in what ways did Bayview change when you lived there? Because you kind of talked about some of the changes that have happened.
Yeah. Well, and society changed. Everything was changing. I don't know in 1958 if kids were still allowed to run free or. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to talk about that you have on that you brought on your?
I have to see.
Yeah.
I raised 3 children here in Bayview, and they all pretty much still ran free.
Yeah.
And my
okay.
oldest is 52, and he remembers being down in the park all the time. In the seminary woods.
Right.
That's
See,
where they hung out.
this was such a playground here because we had 2 parks, Humboldt Park, South Shore Park. We had the seminary. If you wanted to ride your bike or walk up to shops on KK, you could go to the movies. You saved your money to go. It was 25 cents when I went to see a movie. It just was a great place for kids to grow up. There wasn't all that traffic or, streets to worry about other than Kinnickinnick. And I have such good memories of growing up here. So I do remember, I wanted to mention this also, it was probably 7th grade before we had a TV. And I said how much we were outside, but on days where it was rainy or blizzards or snow, we had attics. We played up in the attic, and my mother had saved all these clothes. So we put on shows. We'd put on a little neighborhood play or something, make it up. Or we played games, board games, card games. Very creative. I mean, today, kids are glued to their...
Did you go to the community center? A lot of people remember happy memories of going to the Bill of Britain community.
Yes, I did. And when I went to IC, I took oil painting lessons, and I saved that one oil painting I had. It was thick with oil until I got married, and I said, throw that out. It was up in my mother's attic. See, all these old homes had attics. And yes, that was, and I probably went there. We had some dance classes there, and definitely it was just a block or 2 from Immaculate Conception.
Right up the street. Right?
Yeah. What I did want to remember too, I was saying we didn't have TV, so we, did a lot of creative things, but I remember helping my grandmother with this washing machine, and then the clothes went through the wringer, and I'd catch the clothes as they came out of the wringer, the old wringer washer. And then help her hang them up, which I couldn't reach, but I'll hang them up outside, no dryers. Yeah. What else? I said everything.
Pretty much. Are you currently, or were you previously involved with the Historical Society at all?
I am involved. I used to be on the board of directors. I've been involved for some time. My mother, Evelyn Double Singleton, and my other aunt were charter members.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what year you joined up?
No. Yeah, no. I have one other little history fact.
Sure.
My grandmother Singleton, her brother Thomas, this goes back to the I think he died, he was killed in 1897. At that time, there were no parks. Maybe there was Humboldt Park, but again, South Shore Park was homes. The kids would ice skate on the Milwaukee River, Kinnickinnick River, or out here on the lake. And he was 18 at the time, and the kids were skating, the boys were out there playing hockey, and the police came by and ordered them off the lake because it was dangerous. So you could just go through.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the last one. He kind of hung back and didn't want to stop plane, and the police shot him. He was killed. Now, my aunt told me this at this time, this was 1890s, there was persecution against the Catholics. I don't know what that means or what history, what that's about, and why they shot him, you know, it just...
Wow.
Right, because the reason to get him off the lake would have been to keep him safe.
Safe,
So
yeah.
that would go against the whole entire
Yeah.
premise of why
Yeah.
they were doing it.
When was the Bayview massacre? What was that? The 800?
1886.
So it's around that
1886.
whole time where the police would shoot with impunity, apparently.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
If you didn't do as you're told, yeah.
That was your uncle?
He would have been my uncle, yeah. Because this was 1897 that he was shot. He was
Wow.
18.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Gail?
No,
Well,
no,
yes,
I
or-
found your stories really interesting because you're just a little bit older than I am, and you remember things. I was a baby when you had your memories, like World War II, and so
Yeah.
I don't remember any of that. So it was really fascinating to hear that. I didn't know they had blackout curtains here.
Oh, yeah, shades we had to get, yeah.
Yeah.
I did want to mention, too, about the changes now with Bayview.
Sure.
It's, you know, it's different. All of a sudden, we have all these apartments going up and younger people coming in, and I'm concerned about losing that sense of community and history. I'm very glad that we have the Bayview Historical Society to keep that going, but still, what I see, I live on a corner, and I've been a dog walker, and I've made a lot of friends walking dogs. My dog now has passed away, but being out on a corner and working on the yard, I'm out there, and I say hi to these young people coming by. Some will say hi, some just walk right past. And if they have a dog, I always ask about the dog and the dog's name and pet. And some are friendly and some aren't. And some will remember me and say hi when they come back again with the dog. Others just walk back. And it's just a different, there's not that sense of being part of the community. And I know people want to move to Bayview, but it is, to me, a concern that we're going to lose our sense of, I hope, of community
Sure.
in history.
All right. Anything else you want to add?
I think that's it. Do you have any
Okay.
other questions?
No,
Or?
that should be it, I think. So